Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is, what day is it today? Thursday. And all of our guests today, including Thomas Drance, standing by. Brought to you by the Bayside Oceanfront Resort. Looking for a midweek escape close to home? BC residents save 15% on weekday stays at the Bayside Oceanfront Resort in Parksville. Relax by the ocean, enjoy great dining, and unwind with island hospitality. Book now at BaysideResortParksville.com. Canucks season comes to an end last night, losing 4-1 to the Vegas Golden Knights at Rogers Arena. Here to talk about that and the season that was for Vancouver from The Athletic, Thomas Drance. Thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Doing well. The season that was, well, it definitely was a season.
Yes. Yeah. No adjective there, but we'll wait for that. This time last year, excitement, anticipation, looking forward to a playoff series against Nashville. Thomas, for you, what tops the list in terms of things that went wrong for the Vancouver Hockey Club?
Oh, man, there's so many. I mean, for me, the headline item has to be the intra-squad squabbling that gave us a ton of lifeless performances, November, December, January, that set the team on a path to dismantling the core group that, got to within a game of the Western Conference Final just 11 months prior. For me, that has to be line item one, the headline. What went wrong with the Canucks season? There was a baffling inconsistency and lack of team feeling that prevented this club, I think, from reaching their potential during sort of the meat of this campaign. And then, from there you go to injuries, right? Jake DeBrusk was really the only star player that appeared in every game. Connor Garland missed one, but you had a lengthy Quinn Hughes absence, and then also Quinn Hughes was not quite at the level in sort of the last 20 games of the season that he had been in the first 50 games of the year. And I'd say those first 50 games, were as good as we've ever seen from any Canucks skater, right? Like, I think you can put that up against Pavel Bure in the second half of 94, Luongo in 2008, Henrik and Daniel in 2010, 2011, Quinn Hughes this year. I mean, that's the list. Like, that's the pantheon of great individual Canucks seasons. Quinn Hughes was at that level for 50 games this year, but I don't think he was during sort of the stretch run when the Canucks got back from the Four Nations break, which of course Hughes had to miss due to injury, and then fell well outside the Western Conference playoff picture. Backup goaltending. The club had like a 100-point pace record in Lankinen starts. Obviously, Demko battled injuries and some inconsistency. Artur Shilov's only won 2 of his 10 starts, both of them against Chicago. That hurt the Canucks. Their overtime record, that hurt the Canucks, and a lack of offense. So, I'd start with just kind of the internal dysfunction that caused this team to significantly alter their direction and underperform. And then I'd go down to the injuries, the overtime record, the way they performed and accumulated points in games in which Lankinen didn't play. Those would sort of be all the hockey reasons that this team fell short. And the good news there is at least some of that is likely to prove ephemeral, provided this club can, significantly bolster their forward ranks this summer, which obviously won't be a straightforward thing to achieve.
All right, the 2 big signings that I think, one's got to take place pretty darn quick here, and that's Rick Tocchet. What's your sense of Tocchet and the chances he comes back?
I mean, you'd think they're pretty good, right? For the most part, this team has landed their guy. Things have been complicated in the past with coaches at this time of year. I mean, you remember we entered the off season after the disappointing 2021 year, Rick, where Travis Green was still unsigned. That got done. There was the Bruce Boudreau mutual option year that got done. This organization tends to find a way to land their guy, no matter how complicated the relationship is or how complicated the dynamics are. And in Tocchet's case, I don't think the relationship is that complicated. They want him back. Now, as Tocchet alluded to, there's a checklist. There's a process to go through. from his perspective. And one can understand that given the difficulty of this season, given how, hard he seemed to wear it at various points of the campaign, right? I think this was not a lot of fun for Rick Tocchet. But, I do expect the club to be motivated to keep him. And I expect it does get done, whether it gets done quickly, whether it takes a little bit of time. I suppose that remains to be seen. As we discussed yesterday on the crossover, when you guys joined Canucks Talk, like when it comes to coaches, all bets are kind of off with this organization. I tend to proceed with extreme caution in handicapping these things, just given sort of the history of how it's turned out in the past.
Brock Besser, did he play his final game last night, or is there a chance, despite his comments last week, it doesn't look good?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a chance, right? But this is, we're getting very much into like Han Solo, never tell me the odds territory, right? Or Lloyd Christmas. Yeah, Lloyd Christmas. You're telling me there's a chance territory. I mean, here's the truth, gentlemen, is, I think there's been a material disagreement on valuation. I think it's been complicated. It's been a difficult season. I do think there's an element to which these become emotional decisions. And I think there's an extent to which a player's leverage increases the closer they get to July 1st unsigned, right? I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. Once you go past the deadline and you retain the player beyond that, the leverage spikes in the player's favor. If the Canucks were being careful about managing their costs 3 months ago, well, it's hard for me to say it's likely that switches as we get close to July 1, because I don't expect the price of the brick to go down at this point. I don't know that we're ready, gentlemen, frankly, for what this unrestricted free agent market could look like in the months ahead. We're talking about a world where, like, just yesterday you saw Iafallo in Winnipeg, who's played fourth line minutes all year, signed for $3.7 million times 3. Nick Dowd, ex-Canuck, God bless him, a $3 million valuation, right? That's a bottom six center, like a pure bottom six center. A really good one, by the way. He's been awesome for Washington, but still $3 million. It wasn't too long ago that he would have been more in that like Teddy Bluger, David Camp, $1.5 million, $2 million market, right? Like that's just the start. Brock Besser's a guy who scored 40 goals a year ago. Brock Besser's a consistent 25 goal guy. I mean, that's a totally different thing we're talking about. The Canucks, for example, go into this offseason with like $14 million in cap space. A couple of years ago, during the flat cap era, that would have been reams of flexibility. You can remake your whole roster. Well, this year, there's 5 teams poised to enter this offseason with $30 million in cap space. 2 teams with $40 million in cap space. The Canucks have $14 million, and they're like 23rd among teams available vacant cap space going into the summer. Like, they don't even have average buying power at $14 million. Like, the cap growth that's about to enter the system with sort of predictable hits across the next 3-year period of time is going to change the dynamics of sort of what this stuff looks like. Like, be prepared for some really eye-popping numbers. Given that marketplace, and given that the Canucks have been resistant, I think, to meet Besser's sort of market rate to this point, it is hard for me to imagine that changes significantly between now and July 1. Although I will say, Rick, like the team has never closed the door on this. I still think they like Brock as a person. I still think they like Brock as a player. They obviously haven't been able to bridge that gap and get a deal done yet, but I don't think the door is closed per se. I just look at the fundamentals of sort of how things have played out over the course of this year and think that Brock Besser was probably onto something when he said, honestly, I think it's unlikely.
And Thomas, quickly, do you expect Elias Pettersson to stick around in Vancouver like management and ownership wants him to?
Yeah, I don't really have insight into that specifically, Don, but I know he'll be asked about it when the Canucks players meet the media on Friday. It's tough, right? I mean, without a designated practice facility, it's not like you have everything a player needs all in one spot. I think that's something that players look at and think about in sort of charting out their summer and their plans to prepare for the offseason. You often in these types of situations, as a show of good faith, a player will do a little bit of time to sort of show that they're serious about their commitment and preparation for next season. But I don't know that it's a perfect place for an NHL player to really base themselves out of like the Canucks facility all year, just given that the ice comes up at Rogers Arena and you end up driving around town a fair bit. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll be fascinated to see what Pettersson says, because he's going to be asked about it, given Alvin's commentary on the matter.
Just do the grouse grind every day.
Yeah.
For 2 or 3 months. Done.
That's good, but it's not hockey training, right?
Get a practice facility on top of grouse. There you go, Thomas. It's perfect. It all works out.
Yeah, just set up the winter wonderland all year long. Let's go.
Yeah. Thomas, thanks for this. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, gentlemen.